churning like butter?
Let's not talk about it. So, guess what I played?
What did
Guess
you
what
play?
I bought and played? I played Final Fantasy Pixel Remaster.
Were you disappointed?
No.
Oh, okay.
I was surprisingly, what's the word? I was
pleasantly surprised.
Pleasantly surprised. That's the word. See, I'm not feeling so well. I was pleasantly surprised. It's better than I think we expected, in my opinion.
Yeah.
For instance, I figured out why in the previews and stuff, the boxes looked all off center and weird. And it turns out everything that I'd seen in previews didn't include the action box on the left of, where you select attack or magic or whatever. When that pops up, the bar goes all the way across the screen and fills the screen.
That's weird, though. Like, I get it. I'm picturing what you're saying. I'm just thinking, like, in older games, it was always a bar, and then the box would, like, layer over it and stuff. So it's weird that it's not just filling up the whole space all the time anyway.
Yeah, well, yeah, I guess it does disappear once you selected things and once the actions are happening. But yeah, it makes more sense now. So the bar actually does go all the way across the screen.
Yeah. Right. That does make more sense. I don't know why they didn't layer it like they used to. Like,
yeah, I guess they figured they have the real estate. They can fill it up that way. But yeah, for some reason, all of the previews, they never showed the action box. And so we're always like, why don't they make it bigger and fill the screen?
Because I think we were assuming that action box was going to layer over the field that was already there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it was like, it looks like they totally screwed this up. Like, why would they even release it like that? Well, there was a reason. I haven't noticed. I mean, on my fairly large screen, the sprites seem decently large. I mean, they could be bigger, but it seems fine to me. They fill up the screen nicely.
I don't know. At least in the games and the previews, where you have a 4-player party, which is most of the Final Fantasy games, it just seemed like there was quite a lot of unnecessary space between not just the party members, but the party and the enemies.
Yeah, but I don't know. Playing it seems fine to me. There is a lot of, you kind of looking at a lot of background, but I'll tell you though, the two things that really stand out as having that they did an excellent job with, and that is the sprite work itself. Like, it is not the bubbly, weird sprites from the Final Fantasy VI mobile version.
No, it's like the PlayStation Game Boy remasters style of doing sprite work.
Yeah, and they're really, really good quality. I mean, it's all like 16-bit sprites. For those of us just joining, we're talking about the Final Fantasy Pixel Remaster.
Yeah, we're just cold open.
Yeah. And then the second thing that they did an amazing job was the music. The music is gorgeous. I mean, just unbelievably good.
Still not getting them.
That's fine. I don't blame you.
Maybe if they're like on a really big sale someday. But the fact that they still lack all the definitive add-ons to the end of the game that the other ones have, it's like the visuals were kind of the least of my problem there. That when I heard that was kind of like the make or break thing for me.
Yeah. But the other cool thing about them, about what they've released so far, is Final Fantasy III.
Yeah. It's
really very cool to play a sprite NES version of Final Fantasy III. It's like, wow, this is cool. It's just something I've never, obviously played the game, but just not like that.
Yeah.
And it's cool to have the sort of the original intro where you start with 4 players. It doesn't even give them names.
Nope.
So you have to give them names.
They're just onion knights.
Of course, I gave them.
Fill in. Yeah.
You start out with 4 onion knights and go from there.
Well, like I've said before, is because it was trying to be more like the original after 2.
Yeah. I do wish they would add, and hope that they eventually add the extra content.
They probably won't.
Yeah, I guess not. Which sucks.
But anyway. Welcome to the Vomitorium Weekday Show for the 29th of July, 2021. As always, I am your host, The Metal, and joining me is my co-host, Marsupial Gamer. How you doing today?
Great. I mean,
don't you lie.
Not great, but great anyway.
Fucking liar, really, you know it.
Yeah. I was fine right up until about 20 minutes ago. Then suddenly did not feel so good, and I don't know why. Maybe it was something I ate. I don't know. But
I don't know. Maybe you spent too much time on Twitter and your bullshit intolerance was acting up.
I didn't spend a lot of time on Twitter today. Did I?
I don't know.
Think so. No, I worked most of the day. What is Ulrich saying? He says, so if I remember the last time you guys talked about the remastered sprites, they are rolling them out, but not as a whole, right? You got to buy them individually. You can buy the set. Yeah, you can buy the set of 6 if you want to.
But only the first 3 are out.
The first 3 came out yesterday, and the last 3 are coming out 2021. They haven't announced a date.
Yeah.
So, but you can also buy them individually, and they are 20% off right now.
Yes. Also, you are wrong, Elric. You did not drink soda at the same time as we did. I drank mine half a second after Marsupial because there's a live delay between us. And then you drank yours even later because there's a live delay between our call and the program you're watching. So, wrap your mind around that.
No, it was Scott Adams simultaneous sip. TM.
Yeah. But today, I don't know, we're probably going to actually be talking about some bullshit from what we were planning, because we were talking about this after the program yesterday. It's like, oh, yeah, we could probably just spend a whole show talking about how stupid people are when it comes to marketing their shit on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the episode today.
Yeah, that's the plan.
Yeah.
And the reason I brought it up I guess at the end or maybe after was because of a video, because of a number of things happening in Comicsgate in the last week. So I don't know if you're probably not up to speed on it.
Probably not, because I don't follow bullshit. But I do understand marketing, and this type of information is honestly pretty helpful to people, whether you are in or out of Comicsgate or any of these affiliated groups. You should probably just know how to market your stuff if you want to be successful on the internet.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, there was a live stream last weekend, I think, maybe Sunday. I'm not sure. Somewhere around last weekend with John Malin on John Malin's channel, where he was talking about, and I guess this was started by a couple of people, I don't even know who, a couple of people talking about the fact that Comicsgate, typically the creators do their crowdfunding on Indiegogo. Now, there are plenty of comics creators, indie creators, that do Kickstarters, and I don't think anybody begrudges them that. They can do what they want.
Yeah.
But John Malin did a stream where he basically said, look, as far as I understand, because I didn't watch the whole thing, look, you can do that. I'm not gonna shun you. I'm not gonna, we're not gonna try to gatekeep you somehow out of Comicsgate if you do a Kickstarter. But he said, he does like promotions of people's projects. He said, I am not going to promote a project that's on Kickstarter. And that is for personal reasons, because this first Kickstarter with your boy Zach Jawbreakers was rejected by Kickstarter, and they basically defamed him and said it was promoting bigotry or something like that, which was ridiculous. And he's like, look, Kickstarter's dead to me. I am not going to promote a project on there, but if your next project is on Indiegogo exclusively, I'll be happy to promote that, that sort of thing, if it's an interesting project to you. So that started this whole big, flame war fire thing where people thought he was trying to say, I'm going to shun anyone who uses Kickstarter, and anyone who uses Kickstarter isn't Comicsgate, and blah, 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 all the stuff he wasn't saying. He didn't say any of that stuff. He just said, I don't use it, and I'm not going to promote it, and that's it. So Kyung Lee did a sort of a response video where he did, I believe, correctly, characterize John's stance. I guess he kind of laid out. Kyung Lee's he's an artist, right?
Yes, he is.
And he kind of laid out his reason for basically having the same stance. I mean, he is a little bit less strong of a, he doesn't have personal feelings about it, but he basically just agreed and just said, look, I don't agree with anyone saying, well, if you do Kickstarter, you're evil or you're against the cause or whatever, blah, 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 which John wasn't saying. But he kind of started to go into a bit more of, look, people who think that, because I think a lot of people are out there saying Kickstarter is an untapped market, and if you have a project on Indiegogo, you're missing out on an audience, and that if you do a Kickstarter, there's another audience that you're going to magically grab. And he basically laid out that was not true at all. You may grab a few people, but it's not going to be very significant. And he kind of went into, the fact that basically the promotional stuff that you need to do before you do a Kickstarter, before you do a crowdfund. And that's what we want to talk about.
I think a lot of people are just confused on what marketing is in general. Because I know a lot of people just have very failed projects because they didn't actually market themselves before starting the project. They didn't market themselves during the project. They were basically trying to rely on other people's clout to get their stuff out there, and all kinds of things. And honestly, the platform you're on really doesn't fucking matter to some degree as long as the platform functions. Because, at the end of the day with Indiegogo and Kickstarter, the only difference are the very small portion of people who browse the site looking for things. It's not most of people who end up backing any individual project, though these are the people who back more projects than anybody else. That's just not the way you need to be looking at it. And this very small handful of people, even though they are looking at these sites, and you could probably argue there are more people on Indiegogo specifically searching for comics than on Kickstarter, because due to the whole kerfuffle back in the day, your boy Zach really turned Indiegogo into the place for funding comic books. You could do it on Kickstarter, but Kickstarter's always had basically a 50-50 chance of funding a book, like a comic book. It's not actually a bad rate. But Indiegogo became more like a 63% chance, which is a huge difference when it comes to marketing analytics. But those few people that are searching don't matter. Oh, because they're searching through a huge wave of things. You're lost in a sea. A sea of just projects where people see the cover, and the cover alone has to let them know where they want to check it out. The vast majority of people that are going to be funding you are your audience, or the friends of your audience, the people they would share the shit to, and you have to have that audience established before you even go in on anything.
And so I wanted to show this. This was something I thought of doing yesterday, and you just reminded me.
Are you gonna put it on the stream? Because I do have that screen.
Yes.
Okay.
Can I share my screen?
Yeah, you totally can.
All right.
I was just wondering if I needed to tab over, but I was already there.
Yeah. So this is what you see when you go on Kickstarter and you just look at, now this is graphic novels specifically. There are 3,925 projects. And so if you're betting on just putting it on Kickstarter and just being like, I'm going to make a bunch of money just magically, this is what you're up against.
Yeah.
Just like reams and reams, pages and pages and pages. It goes on and on and on. And this is what you're going to be competing against on Kickstarter.
You're a single minnow in a big school.
Right. And if you switch it to specifically comics, there's 19,000 projects currently active. They're not showing the old stuff. This is what is on there, like, currently. And so it's always been there's she. That's cool.
That's cool.
If you're Billy Tucci, you're gonna do great because you've been doing great.
Billy Tucci has an audience.
Yeah, he already has an audience. But if you're like, well, Indiegogo is smaller, and I'm going to branch out and go on Kickstarter. You're not going to get that many more, if any, backers.
Yeah. Not from searching.
Yeah. And so people just think that they're just going to put it on Kickstarter without any other work and just magically get more. And it's just not going to happen. Now,
yeah, because we were talking about...
on average.
Because this is specifically involved with what we're talking about right here. We were talking about thinking there's a different audience on Kickstarter.
Yeah.
But that different audience is literally just the people who search. That small, insignificant amount of people. Otherwise, it's your audience, and it's the same people that would follow you, whether you were on Kickstarter or Indiegogo or any other number of platforms. Though you should probably just stick to like the big two, because it's really hard to convince people to jump to some other platform. There's not as much trust behind like the fulfillment services and all that.
I'm going to close that. Just wanted to let you know. So yeah. It drives me nuts when people are like, oh, we're just leaving money on the table by not going to Kickstarter. And I'm like, no, you're really not. I mean, maybe a little. And I mean, it kind of, I don't know. It just depends. I don't know what people's expectations are, but there are way, way better ways to make sure that you don't leave money on the table than by just putting your project on multiple platforms. Yeah.
Like, you know,
Alex says he...
Oh, what did Alex say?
Mm-hmm. He says he doesn't like Kickstarter. I thought he said he did, but he says he doesn't like Kickstarter because it doesn't take the money right away.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
That's one thing I don't like about Kickstarter. So you have to know the difference of the platforms. Yeah. Indiegogo has two options. And one of their options is like the Kickstarter option. And the way Kickstarter works is you basically make the promise that you're going to pay once it's fulfilled. It's an all or nothing service, but the money doesn't get taken out of your account until fulfillment hits the end of the cycle. And that, they'll try to charge your account multiple times. You'll get a notice if it doesn't go through, but you might forget that you were going to pay for it. And some people live paycheck to paycheck and they want that money taken away right away. If you do Indiegogo has an option that is not the whole all or nothing, though you can pick that as well. They have the flexible payment or whatever, where you just end up getting what you get as long as you pass a certain amount. And that gets taken out of your account literally immediately. I think even the all or nothing in Indiegogo takes out immediately. They just refund you if it doesn't go through, just so they make sure that the money's handled. It's like in a holdings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Ulrich also points out that Kyung Lee mentioned that if you have an audience on Indiegogo and then you go to Kickstarter and put exclusive stuff on Kickstarter, he says you'll likely lose your audience. Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
I don't think you'll lose a huge amount, because some people like exclusive shit, right? So that I get what he's saying. But if you have something that's exclusive to an Indiegogo campaign and something that's exclusive to a Kickstarter, one, there's the people who really like the exclusive stuff that might pick up both.
Mm-hmm.
But also, people feel like the thing that they got was special if they only get one. I really don't think that's going to hurt most of your audience. It's going to be a very small amount of people.
Mm-hmm.
I personally don't like exclusive shit, but I'm in a minority there, and I respect that opinion.
Yeah, I mean, look at games. Like, people hate console exclusives and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, especially if the console
they do
exclusive
really well
has,
as well, right?
Yeah.
People hate it, but they do really well.
Yeah, but they also do a hell of a lot of promotion.
Yeah.
I think it depends on your audience,
right?
Yeah.
Games are different. If you have stuff that go to consoles, you have an audience there that's not even necessarily an audience of your own, because Sony or Microsoft also promote your game for being on their console, and you get to dip into the Sony or Microsoft like audience. This is kind of like the benefit of being in a big publisher when they actually do their job, say for comics. If you were in maybe one of these imprints that they used to run back in the day, like say Vertigo, before they reincorporated everything into DC, and they even tried to start using Vertigo like that again within the last few years, you have access to DC's audience because DC's going to be promoting the book that you're making underneath them in a different way than you do as an independent. But these kind of things really don't matter to what we're talking about, because none of the people here have access to any of that level of promotion.
Right. So we started talking about yesterday after the show.
Yeah.
The mindset of some of the people that we've seen in indie comics, we'll just say indie comics, has been completely ass backwards.
Oh, yeah.
And I mean, none of what we're going to say here is totally original. Like, people have said this before.
Yeah.
But
I might tell you something that a couple of people haven't said before, but that I've been telling to people.
Possibly.
Which is a great marketing idea. Nobody wants to pick it up.
Okay.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. I think it's sort of the myth of the overnight success, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you always see these people who, quote unquote, suddenly become a success and don't realize that they've been working at it for fucking years. And we talked about, your boy Zach and EVS, and when they started their YouTube channels, what their goals, we think, were when they started their channel versus, where they are now. And the fact is, I don't think Zach had any ambitions, or, not real active ambitions of doing any kind of kickstarting or, any kind of crowdfunding when he first started his channel. All he wanted to do was draw an audience to his channel. Yeah. And just, and have people come and consume his content. That was
already widely successful people prior to making projects like this.
Right. And I mean, I don't know what EVS's goals were at the beginning, but I mean, maybe he had people. Yeah.
And teach, because he was doing his whole, it was Comic Artist Pro Secret, so he was trying to teach people what you can do at your home to make comics yourself on a budget. Just $100. Look at what you can buy to start a comic at Walmart.
Yeah.
That was one of my favorite videos. He should continue doing stuff like that. I thought that was amazing.
But yeah, I don't think that he had any real thought about, like, I'm going to parlay this into getting multi-million-dollar or $1 million crowdfund campaigns. Like, that wasn't his goal at first. It was to create that audience on YouTube. And so they built that up, and neither of them did a crowdfund until they had a huge audience already on YouTube. I mean, at least like 50,000, I think, in the case of Zach, and maybe more on EVS's channel, before they even thought about doing a crowdfund campaign.
Yeah.
And people keep saying this over and over, build your own audience, build your own audience. But for some reason, people aren't listening.
Yeah, or they listen, but they don't listen to the core advice. They listen to the specific words coming out of somebody's mouth. Like, I brought this up.
Yeah.
EVS, time and time again, is like, he specifically says, build your YouTube, build your YouTube, build your YouTube. Because he knows what he's doing.
Mm-hmm.
I think on the inside, he understands what advice he's giving to people, but the words coming out of his mouth are very specific and not necessarily helpful. Because a lot of people will try to build their YouTube channel, and most of these people aren't engaging, charismatic, entertaining people that can actually build a YouTube channel. And the real advice that's coming out of his mouth, if you translate his words to what they mean, is build your network. Go out there, build an audience. You could go on to other things. He's even said this on discussion streams with other people, but nobody pays attention because those streams are like 10 hours long. They're not actually that long, but they feel like they're 10 hours long. But like you could build up a Twitter account really high as long as you get regular engagement and a lot of followers. The engagement's the most important part here. You could build up an Instagram account, which is a good place to build for artists as long as your engagement is high. Probably not Pinterest, because there's no really engagement on Pinterest, so I wouldn't say a place like that. Yeah. But there's a number of different places that you could build up a large audience. You just gotta really focus on building up that engagement. Because even a YouTube channel, if you got 1 million views on something and nobody's commenting, that's not really an audience.
Mm-hmm.
Engagement is the key thing when building an audience. Yeah. You gotta be like, am I doing something right that people are engaging with what I'm doing?
Mm-hmm. Or like, what was that webcomic site?
Which one?
Free webcomics. Yeah, like Webtoons.
Yeah, Webtoons. Yeah. Tapas. It used to be called Tapastic. It's just tapass.ic now. Or whatever. Mm-hmm. It's basically the same name, but they call it Tapass. It's basically the same thing as Webtoon. I like the format there better. Mm-hmm. I think Webtoon has a slightly higher user base. But there's a lot of different places you can go. They all have comment sections. You can engage with people. You definitely want to make sure that wherever you're building an audience, there is a place for them to comment, because that's really the only way you can gauge this engagement.
Yeah. And that, to me, I think you got to have the attitude or the goal of not, I'm going to crowdfund someday, but I want to build the audience. That needs to be your main focus.
That's how you do success anywhere, right? We can even go back to, let's look at classic YouTube. And this is something that we've talked about before that I've had to point out. Even when the YouTube ad revenue was the peak, the highest it ever was, the most viewed people on YouTube didn't make shit off of YouTube, right? Mm-hmm. It's just they don't. You might get a little bit. It's a nice side revenue to get the ad from there. But even looking like PewDiePie, who's the most viewed person on the channel, he barely made like 6 figures, and most of his income doesn't come from that. It comes from building an engaging audience, and then you can use your platform that you already have that's already successful to start selling merchandise to them or some other thing, or they can donate to a Patreon or something. Like, it's always been, I have an audience now, how do I capitalize on this thing I already have? Not, I want to build this thing so I can move to something I could capitalize. It's, this came first, how do I capitalize on it? Has always been the successful route when doing things on the internet.
Yeah. So, we see a lot of people, I think, just really, really focusing on crowdfunding. And then that's when they get into this trap of, and I also have to do, if I just get on Kickstarter too, that'll add more. And then just being disappointed with their sales and stuff like that. And they're just because they're not building their audience.
Yeah. Like, you want to look at something.
I know people keep saying this, but
right, classic internet comic. I hate it. I think it's trash, but it's very, very popular. There's this comic that was called Homestuck that had been around for a long time. Very cringy audience likes Homestuck, but It was a digital comic, kind of done in almost like an animated form originally, but it was still just frames. It was like a comic you could click through, right? And this had built such a big internet audience that you can actually buy physical copies of Homestuck in Barnes & Noble right now if you go there. There's just big printed books. It's like this thick too. And it's in like a square book because of the format of how the comic was. And it's like they were successful. Now they have printed versions of their book. And they didn't care. If you go back to Homestuck, it was free. People tipped and donated to it. It went on for years. And they were able to capitalize. There's tons of Homestuck merchandise. People cosplay these characters at conventions and stuff like that. Like, this is not like a novel thing. People have been doing this shit for a while. People just don't pay attention to what works.
It says MS Paint Adventures.
Yeah. Look at the quality of the comic, and you'd be like, "Oh wow, that is something that is annually returning 5 figures, if not totally breaking 6 figures over its lifetime."
Yeah. That's funny. Yeah, but one thing I brought up with Kyung Lee on his, a comment to his video, his Sunday video, was Friday Night Funkin', and the fact
video games, because it's all still crowdfunding.
Yeah, and that it was, people look at that and they think, oh, that made over $2 million on Kickstarter, and I'd never heard of it before that. So just putting things on Kickstarter must definitely get you $2 million.
You've never heard of it before that. That's
exactly.
The thing, right?
Yeah, and I pointed out what people don't understand is that it was unbelievably hugely popular on Newgrounds for months, if not maybe a year. And in fact, what was funny was that Kyung Lee responded to me and said, "Oh, that's on Kickstarter? I've heard of that game." He's like, "I played that game." He's like, "I don't know where I played it." "Oh, it must have been on Newgrounds." I was like, "Yeah, of course you've heard of it."
Everybody is. It's huge.
I know. And everyone had heard of it before it did the Kickstarter.
The thing is, it's got such an engaging audience. Before the Kickstarter even come out, people were making mods of the Flash game. People still make mods of it. People are making like their own fan art, animations and stuff. Like, when you start seeing things like that happening, it's like, oh, I've got something I can capitalize on.
Oh, and there's dozens of clones of it on Newgrounds.
Yeah, it's like
other people trying to do the same thing. And and it was a phenomenon, and I don't think they even had any plans to make it into a full-fledged game that they crowdfunded. Not. Probably not. If they did,
like,
there was no
probably
indication.
had the idea that it could happen in the background. Like, just sitting there like, if this gets popular, we could do something with it, but... Yeah.
But it's like no different than any of the other millions of Flash games on Newgrounds, where it's like, we're just putting this out there and trying to get some interest in this game. It would be great if it made billions of dollars, but, didn't really have any expectations. And it's just, that's the way I think people see these things and just think they just come out of nowhere. And it's just like, oh, it just got successful by just being on Kickstarter.
Yeah.
Like, no. and I've been following crowdfunding since long before there were comic book Kickstarters, and especially with games and stuff. And I've read tons of articles from 5-10 years ago about crowdfunding and how, you have to, and back in the early days, it was like, you got to get friends and family interested in it before you,
or you have to be an established name, which in the earlier days, I think there was maybe 1 or 2 established names. It was mostly people in their garage doing things with the friends and family. I don't think it was until halfway through the 2010s that we really started seeing like previously established names and studios become popular in crowdfunding.
Yeah. But, and I remember back in the day, in the early days of Kickstarter, it was like, you gotta be in these Silicon Valley, chat groups, before Twitter was real popular and that sort of thing. It's like the only way you're going to be successful is you get into these tech, message boards and chat rooms and drum up interest long before you even think about starting a crowdfund. Otherwise, it's guaranteed to fail. Of course, I was talking about games where you kind of needed to have like $100,000 if you wanted to actually do it. But, all of these comics crowdfunders just, I guess, didn't know. I feel like they just haven't followed how crowdfunding since the early days.
No.
And just
well, they didn't get into it until they saw popular comics. That's really it, right?
Yeah. And then they think it's easy because Zach and Ethan made it look easy.
Yeah.
Whereas they didn't even follow them, didn't even realize their history.
I don't think maybe one of them was over 1 million subscribers at the time, but collectively they probably had 1 million subscribers between the two of them when they were doing stuff like this.
I mean 100,000.
100,000. Are either of them even close to 1 million yet?
No way.
I figured EVS would because he's such a charismatic person. Man, only 100,000. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
No, they are not quartering level.
Wow.
Comics Artist Pro Secrets has 145,000 subscribers. That's it.
See, I haven't been looking at either of them for a while. Like Zach, I understand because he's not a super charismatic person, and he's also not as extreme as he used to be. So I kind of figured he wasn't quite up there. But Ethan, he's such a charismatic guy. I figured he would have at least been close by now.
No way. And Zach is at 107,000.
Yeah. So they don't even have the viewership of like some of these huge people, but they're in the 6-figure range of viewership, right? Because you have subscribers. Your average viewership is probably going to be somewhere between 1/3 and half of your subscribers.
That Umbrella guy is actually right in the middle, 138. Interestingly. But yeah, I mean, I think when Zach first did his first Kickstarter, he was maybe around 50,000.
Yeah, that's nothing. But that's still an audience, right? It's still an audience, but like, I mean, we got nothing. We're not even close to that in any degree. Yeah. But like, there's people who get a less average viewership than us, if you count like our SoundCloud plays, that are trying to kickstart stuff. I'm like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
I mean, what the hell are you don't have anybody following you.
Yeah, and what's interesting is that you've got these people who really don't seem to be interested in doing that, but totally could, based on their followers and their engagement and stuff. Yellow Flash is one guy who I'm like, if he did a comic, I mean, he could practically hire an artist and hire a writer and have them do everything.
Yeah.
And it would make probably close to 6 figures. But if he's not interested, then he's not interested. But it's funny because
Cloudfish TV has more than EVS.
Yeah, aren't they doing a comic?
They actually just did a crowdfund. Like, I think it's obviously still going, but it's already funded from what I've heard. Like they funded it almost immediately.
Yeah, they're at 224K.
Yeah.
They've got nearly 100,000 more.
Yeah.
They've got about 80,000 more than EVS.
They have almost twice his viewership. Almost. Yeah.
Doug Ernst is another guy who crowdfunded. He's only got 11.6K subs. Yeah, but he gets a lot of engagement on Twitter as well. And he writes for
he's a journalist. He's got a different audience as well that's following his Twitter.
Yeah.
That not just his YouTube.
Yeah. Yeah, he writes for a major newspaper. I don't remember which. But yeah, and I see, and I hate to. I'm not. I'm not a hater of who I'm going to talk about, but I see people like Shabby, creator of Vestry, and they're doing the whole IGG and Kickstarter gambit, and it's not really working out for them, unfortunately. I don't think they got very many sales for their third comic, and their comic's really good, I think. Some people don't think so, but the problem is they stopped promoting it totally, as far as I can tell. I haven't seen Shabby on a live stream in, what did we say, like 6 months at least. Yeah.
This is what they
or my pickles.
I'm gonna tell you what they need to do, right? This is my gambit that I was talking about. What they need to do is, because they are successful enough when they do run like their Indiegogo originally, enough to at least get the book off the ground. But the problem is, unless you're these super widely successful people, you are leaving money on the table. And that's not because you're not going over to another platform. It's because you just don't have a big audience. And there's probably a lot of people that might enjoy your thing, but they have absolutely no way of knowing that you exist until after you're done running your campaign, because people have it and they like your book and now they review. But aside from like maybe some leftover copies, or maybe you run the last issue in the next campaign, there's no way of picking it up now, right? Mm-hmm. And you can only run so many back issues in a campaign before it gets so overloaded. It's like, I can't print any more copies of number 1 now that I'm on number 5. And if people don't have a way of getting into your story, especially if you're telling I guess a non-icon story, right? Like a story that actually has a plot line to it, a through line where you need to pay attention to each issue. Nobody's going to want to jump in at issue number 5 if they can't get into 1, right?
Yeah.
So the answer to that for smaller creators, I think, actually is print on demand. And this is what I do. I've had a few sales, but I'm not saying do exactly what I do, because the reason I don't do a Kickstarter or anything, which is a better way to make money, is because I don't have the audience, right? People ask me like, why don't you do like some type of crowdfunding? It's like, well, I tried that a long time back when I actually had a larger audience on, say, YouTube and stuff, and it didn't take. And my larger audience is in my comics now, but I don't think I have a big enough audience to actually successfully crowdfund a book. So I'll hold off on shit like that. But because they can successfully crowdfund a book, what you do is you make an exclusive pack for the crowdfund, your investors pack, right? Because that's the whole point to crowdfunding. These are your investors. You can have a nicer cover, whatever, doesn't matter. You can have some like side things, stickers, stuff that you're only ever going to get in this exclusive pack. This is like, selling the variant cover at the comic book store. And then afterwards, you have the less premium version of the books. The interiors are still 100% the same, but this is done at a print-on-demand place like Kablam with Indie Planet. And then you have this book. It's not the super exclusive premium version, but it's the entry version that anybody can get at any time that you can always promote. And then if somebody's like, they missed your super big exclusive Kickstarter with all your cool stuff, but they see that you're being successful, well, they can hop in for a lesser price plus shipping to get your whole backlog. And it's like, I'm ready for 5 and I want that cool shit now. I'm on the bandwagon. I'm caught up. I'm invested in your story. You're starting to take the money off the table that's left there at that point. Yeah. And this stuff, you also aren't losing money on, because sometimes people's Kickstarters, they don't manage it well, because you have to make sure that you pay for all of this shit. And sometimes people get out like even at best by the end of the Kickstarter and stuff. If you already have this established name that people want to get into but can't, and they go to a print on demand, they take their cut right from the fees and they send you what they owe you, and it's no money off your back at that point. It's just handled. It's done. And yeah, this is like, there's a middleman between you, but you're a small creator who needs the help, and needs to get that money off the table. You're not like these huge guys that can afford to have these $1 million campaigns where they get to keep all of the excess after fulfilling it themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty smart. I wonder if there's people who could you could include that as an add-on, like the back issues, and basically order them print on demand yourself and then ship them to the people, or if that would be, I wonder if you could make money that way.
Well, if you already have it set up on print on demand, right? Because don't ever order through Indie Planet if you're a creator. They even tell you not to do that. You go back to the Kablam fulfillment site. You actually can, at the cost that it would be, like if you're buying in bulk for conventions, Kablam is a fulfillment service. So if you already have it on there, you can just order in bulk, pretty cheap. You'll get a price cut for everything. And you're like, hey, 100 people ordered the thing with the back issues. I'm just going to order 100 copies because it's always available there. I don't have to go and reset things up. Or you could even, reorder from your old people if you want. That's no problem. Most of them still have the files. If you go to like Mixum, who's another fulfillment that I know a lot of people use, and you're like, hey, I need 100 more copies. They're like, okay, here's the price. We still have the file. It's ready for print and stuff like that. I mean, you can do that. Yeah. It's no problem. It's just how far back can you continue to go depending on like how many issues in are you. If you're at issue 10, you can't do all 9 back issues, even if like 100 people order it, because then like the weight of the package starts to become super fucking heavy, and that's also going to start coming out of your fulfillment money and. Like, it becomes ridiculous. If you have a print-on-demand service that has all your back issues, they're the ones that handle that. And especially if you have a lot, then people are more willing to buy it as well, because that saves them on shipping, right? Because up until a certain point, if you only have like maybe 9 issues that you're ordering, it's still going to cost $5. They have like a flat minimum shipping rate. But if you're ordering 9 issues for $5 versus 1 issue for $5, you're actually saving a lot of money.
Yeah. I don't know if Flit left.
Yeah. And
yes,
Kablam's great. The print quality is fine. I use it.
Yeah.
You have to order 1 copy if you're going to do print on demand at Indie Planet. You have to do a proof copy. But like I've compared the paper stock quality, the print quality and everything to some other comics that have come in, like the Canadian Shield and Vestry, who I know use different fulfillments, and the comic feels the fucking same to me if I'm reading both of them. Like, I have no problem with the quality here. It's a great service, and that's something where people are leaving money on the table. And you're not just going to get free sales having it on a print-on-demand service, though. You do still need to advertise it. Having your own website is fucking cheap as fuck these days, especially with like Wix and all of these website creators, that I don't know why everybody who doesn't have their own independent property doesn't have their own fucking website that they can point people to, right? You're talking about like hosting an audience and everything. Does Kablam print manga style? Yes, they do print manga style. They'll even print it backwards. If you just have to send them the files in that order. I've already asked them that question because I have one I want to print. You just send the files labeled in the reverse order, and they'll print it in the order that you do it, and tell them that you're reading it that way so they know. But like you put page 1 as page like 46 in my case, and so on and so forth, and they'll print the pages in the order from left to right that you put them in. So page 46 is page 1. And you can still read it like a manga. They'll even put, like, if you just label the front cover, the back cover, because you have to label each page a certain way when you go through Kablam. They have like.
So it's kind of like.
But they'll do it perfectly. Like, here's your manga. You even tell them that, and they'll still, even though it's the back cover, they'll still put the front cover as the preview cover on there. You just label that because you can give them comments and everything, and they'll follow your comments to the best of their ability. Yeah. So on Indie Planet, it'll still have the right cover. It'll just show up on the back when it's printed because that's the direction you're going to read from.
Yeah, so the answer to the question is kind of no, but like you kind of have to do it yourself.
Manga print as well. Like they have the paper stock, they have the scale.
Different.
Yeah, because manga isn't the same ratio as comics. They're smaller. Yeah.
Yeah.
So they do manga printing.
Right.
Kablam is in Florida. It's a Florida company. It's one reason you can trust them. They also don't censor people as long as things are rated right on their site.
You trust Florida companies?
It's Florida and Texas. They're the states right now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, what you're saying is they won't do it automatically. You have to basically give them the pages in reverse order.
Yeah, and it said it would be best if you did it in the order that it's going to print. I think they would still, like, if you gave them the information, they would still compensate and everything. But it would be best and easiest if you gave them in the order it should print. Right.
So yeah, you kind of have to do the work of reversing the pages.
Yeah. It's not hard though, because like they print using TIF files, right? Mm-hmm. So if you don't have the original files to make a TIF or whatever, you have to convert your PNGs into TIF anyway. And you have to label it using their labeling system. So if you know that, when you're making all of the print-ready files, you just label them appropriately.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like, the front cover has to be, like, A_front cover. Then you also need, like, B_inside front. And your back cover is going to be, like, Z_back cover. And there's also going to be, like, a Y_inside back. And then all of your files have to be, like, 0001 or something like that. Even if you don't have 1,000 pages, this is just like how they label it.
Do they do spines?
Yes. Yeah, they do. If you're big enough, they'd spine it. I think it's after 60 pages they start spining it like that. Otherwise, it's still just a staple. It's a great fulfillment service. People sleep on Kablam.
Yeah.
They also do magazine style fulfillment as well.
What's the difference there? Just that's on.
Well, okay. So comics have a very, very specific ratio to them, right? Mm-hmm. When you work on it, it's before the print bleeds and trim. It's like 7 by 10 inches, right? Magazines also have a very specific ratio, but it's a lot closer to the 8.5 by 11. That's legal letter size. Right, but it's slightly wider. So comics are slightly like narrower. Magazines are slightly wider ratio. They're also physically bigger if you've ever held up a magazine. So there are print ratios for all of these things, and it actually does use like the magazine paper, I believe. And same like manga is a lot. I think it's closer to the magazine ratio, but it's smaller and more stout in general.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, is this the usual size?
Yeah, that's the usual manga size.
Because this is like,
and then you can
compared to this is 8.5 by 11.
Yeah, that's legal paper. Yeah,
it's a little bit wider in ratio, but it's much smaller versus this being a comic book, which is. Also, you're right, smaller than 8.5 by 11. You can see that.
Yeah. And then if you actually, like, it's hard to tell if you're just looking at them separately, but if you were to, like, go into Photoshop and take the scales and line them up, you realize, oh, these aren't even the same proportions between the manga and the comic.
Right. That's what I was saying. This actually is wider in comparison. Yeah. It's basically a wider ratio.
And magazines are a different ratio as well. Yeah.
Yeah. But Ulrich, don't do crowdfunding unless you built your audience up to,
Yeah. I think like I said, everyone with an IP needs a website in this day and age. Like, it's a must, and I don't know why a lot of people don't.
Mm-hmm. Hey, here's a question. Is there a cyberfrog.com?
I don't know. There should be.
There is not.
Or like, wait. Well, check all caps. Does all caps have a website? That's the more important thing. publishing company.
Yeah. Oh, I know what I'm doing after the show.
Are you stealing his website?
Well, maybe.
I'm going to put it on hold for ransom.
That's interesting. Yeah. Well, similar to IndieCron. I bought IndieCron.com originally.
Yeah.
And then Pixel Trader had a variation of it. And what was funny, he contacted me to ask if I could sell it, and not realizing who I was. I mean, I think we sort of knew each other.
Yeah.
I don't think he didn't know my name. It's kind of like Rick.
Yeah, when Rick was like trying to figure out who's this guy. You're friends with him on Facebook. I'm like, dude, that's Marsupial.
Yeah, exactly. Well, that Pixel Trader was the same thing. He found my name. I guess I had just registered. I didn't do a private registration, so he saw my name, and he didn't put it together with Marsupial, and so he contacted me. I was like, sure, man, I'll sell it to you. I don't care. But basically, I think I bought it to make sure and keep it away from War Campaign.
Yeah, pretty much. It's on hold. It's like, as long as somebody's holding this, it's safe.
Yeah. And I was like, I bought it for you, basically. I didn't, not for him specifically, but I bought it for someone like you to make sure it was safe.
To be safe.
Yeah. So when he paid me at cost exactly what I had paid for it, and I transferred it over. So anyway, just so you know, allcapscomics.com redirects to the All Caps Comics YouTube page.
Okay, well, at least he owns the domain. That's important. But he should have a website. It shouldn't just redirect to his to the YouTube page.
Yeah, he should. Yeah. But at least he has it, obviously.
Especially with the way you don't want to rely on that to be your website.
Yeah, I'm gonna reserve cyberfrog.com if it's not already.
It's like, I have my domain.
Yeah.
Right. And I use the site as like an all-encompassing site of news about what's going on, hosting webcomics, information about the individual characters and world, links to different storefronts and stuff like that. And you can find all my Indie Planet print-on-demand stuff links there. You need a central hub for your IP so that new people who find out about it can easily have access to everything about your product. That's
I think with social media and YouTube, people have forgotten about the concept of a website.
Yeah.
Of their own website. It's like, businesses understand this, and you're trying to be a business. Every business has to have a website still, even in 2021.
Well, that's what you have to think about, right? So you're going from independent content creator, which all of us are on the internet. Even just a webcomic before you turn into a business model is independent content creation. You're going from that into actually being a small business, which even a lot of independent content creators do that. The Quartering is a good example that we bring up. He has merchandise and stuff like that. I actually believe he has his own website that has redirect links to all the other stuff that he does. And most people at least have like a link tree or something. Even having a link tree helps. Something like that you can redirect people that has everything. Instead of like, go to my YouTube page, then find the About section, and hopefully I have all the links in there, even though nobody ever goes to the About section of somebody's YouTube page. It's pretty dumb. But like...
YouTube is not your website.
It's not. You're going from independent content creator to an actual small business. You need to treat yourself like an actual small business. Every small business I know in town has a website. In my frickin' used to be a cow town has their own website. My local pizza place that only exists here, they're not a chain, has their own website with their menu and everything to where I can look it up before going down there. If you have like a fucking kickstarted comic or whatever, you should have your own website. And you should be able to have a blog post on the site where it can show you updates about the Kickstarter. I think your Indiegogo and Kickstarter APIs allow you to embed that shit directly into your website.
Yeah. And if you don't know how to do that or can't figure it out, there are programmers out there who can help you for a nominal fee.
We have freelancers on this show.
Yes, absolutely. I definitely, and I, I'm not going to charge $150 an hour to some guy who I really love their comic and I think it looks cool, and they're like, hey, I have no idea how to make a website.
Small creators in general, like Dario, who sometimes shows up in the chat, was asking for like a consulting thing. It's like, I'm really busy, but I could do it. I could do a dialogue consultation as long as we're like on chat with each other and we're doing it live. I actually have to raise my rates because I haven't raised them in a decade, and I only just realized earlier this year I haven't raised my rates in a decade, and money has been inflating. But like, I'm not going to charge $25 to $30 an hour for a small creator's dialogue consultation, even though that would be my normal rate for something. I would probably cut it down, like, you know, depending on how much we get done during the hour, maybe $10 to $15 an hour. I'm doing this. I'm giving you a discount because you're a small creator, and I like to see people flourish.
If someone has no idea what they're doing, they need like domain registration, throw up a small WordPress site, show them how to use it. It'll take me like a couple hours to do all of that, and I wouldn't charge them even $50 for that. I would just be
whatever.
Give me enough to buy a hamburger or something.
If you want to send me a tip, I'm not going to complain, but this is what I'm going to charge you.
I mean, especially if it's like someone I talk to and I'm friends with and I like their comic idea and stuff like that. Maybe send me a free comic whenever whenever you make
I've been giving people discounts all the time. Like, when Piper had me do stuff, right? Because she just needed those quick to access. I said, it's like, $10 per asset. That's fine. It didn't take me that long to do it. I still ended up making as much as I would have charged if I did the full time anyway, because she tipped me anyway. Like, everybody ends up tipping me. It's like, I'm trying to give you a discount. I'm not complaining. I'm trying to be nice here.
Yeah. Sub to my channel on Twitch, that's all I ask. So, yeah. People need to be more creative. And one of the takeaways I want that you were saying was that it doesn't have to be YouTube. There's other places, but you got to build an audience somewhere.
Build an audience.
Even your own
build a website. Look at other options. Like having a print-on-demand continuous after you've done your premium version or something like that. I think these are three things that nobody's really considering. One of them, like the audience thing, people are considering. They're just not understanding what words are coming out of people's mouth and when they mean build an audience. These other two, though, it's like almost nobody's even thinking of.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Absolutely. So that's our crowdfunding advice.
Yep. And that's
unsolicited.
The
show. Yep.
Yeah. So thanks for watching. Anyone, whether you're watching it live now or sometime in the future, hopefully I'll leave some type of tag. Maybe for the YouTube version, I'll go back and change the title from just the date, so I can remember. Oh, this is the crowdfunding thing. But hopefully this helped you. If you enjoy the show, please share it with somebody else who might enjoy it, or you think needs this information in this particular case. And if you really enjoy the show, consider donating to fill up that little monthly hosting fee bar, because this does come out of my pocket, and I like not having to pay. And we'll see you guys on the next time. The link is streamlabs.com/Vomitorium Live.
See ya.